Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
Higher.
Today we're diving deep into the captivating world of Mark Twain. A true giant of American literature, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Born Samuel Langhorne Clemens in 1835, and he was so much more than just an author.
Right.
He was a storyteller, sure, but also a humorist, a philosopher, a really keen observer of society. Just multifaceted.
And that name, Mark Twain, it's got such a great story itself.
It does. From his riverboat pilot days.
On the Mississippi, it means 2 fathoms deep, right?
Exactly, the mark for safe water. It really ties back to those early formative experiences.
Which makes sense. His early life in Missouri, particularly along the Mississippi River, seems absolutely central to his writing.
It really was. Hannibal, Missouri, where he grew up,
Yeah.
that became the blueprint, for St. Petersburg and other fictional towns in his books.
And his family background, too, is quite telling. His father, a bit of an idealist, maybe?
Yeah, a dreamer, definitely. And his mother was apparently a fantastic storyteller.
Ah, so you can see the threads there.
You really can. And then, tragically, his father died young.
Which forced him out of school.
Right. He became a printer's apprentice. That was his first sort of real encounter with the power of words, the written word.
And that led to quite a varied early career, didn't it?
Oh, definitely. He didn't just stick to one thing. Printing in places like St. Louis, New York.
Big cities.
Yeah, and then that esteemed role, relatively speaking, of a steamboat pilot.
Which is a big deal back then.
A very big deal. Highly respected, lots of responsibility. You needed incredible knowledge of the river.
But the Civil War interrupted that.
It did. River traffic pretty much stopped.
Wait,
And that disruption, well, it pushed him westward.
towards Nevada.
Exactly. And working as a journalist out there, that's when he adopted the pen name,
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain.
Mm-hmm.
And his humorous, witty style really started getting noticed. People started paying attention.
So let's talk about some of those famous works. Where should we start? Tom Sawyer.
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, 1876. That feels like the natural starting point. It's often called his love letter to boyhood.
Set in that fictional St. Petersburg, based on Hannibal.
Right back to Hannibal again. What always strikes me about Tom Sawyer is the sheer energy of it.
The language is so lively, isn't it? The dialogue feels incredibly real for the time.
It really does. It just pulls you into that 19th century small town American life.
Yeah.
You even get snippets of period slang.
Yeah, you feel like you're there.
And then after that comes what many consider his absolute masterpiece.
Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, 1884.
That's the one. The journey down the Mississippi with Huck and Jim, the runaway slave. Well, it's profound.
It tackles some huge moral dilemmas. Huck's internal struggle is just so powerful.
It is. He's wrestling with what society tells him is right versus what his own conscience, his own heart is telling him about Jim.
And the language, again, that distinctive Southern dialect Huck uses.
It's remarkable. A fantastic example of how language reflects place and culture. But we do need to address the language itself.
Yes, the inclusion of the N-word. It's unavoidable when discussing the book.
It is. And it's crucial, I think, to understand the historical context. Twain was using the vernacular of the time.
He wasn't endorsing it. He was depicting the harsh reality of racism.
Precisely. He wanted to show it, warts and all. It's a difficult aspect,
Right.
but understanding his intent is key for, a nuanced reading.
Absolutely. But his writing wasn't just those 2 novels, was it? He was incredibly prolific.
Oh, incredibly. Think about The Innocents Abroad from 1869.
The travelogue. Very funny, very sharp.
His sarcastic wit is just on full display there. His observations about Americans encountering Europe and the Holy Land are often hilariously cutting.
He pokes fun at the tourists, right?
Oh, mercilessly sometimes. And then you have something totally different, like a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
1889, the time travel one.
Yeah, a really clever way to offer social and political commentary, comparing his time to Arthurian England. Makes you think about progress.
Is newer always better, kind of thing.
Kinda, yeah. And then there's The Prince and the Pauper from 81.
Exploring class and identity by switching roles. Classic premise, but he does it so well.
He does. It lets him really examine how superficial those social barriers are.
And we shouldn't forget Pudd'nhead Wilson. That one's darker.
Much darker. 1894, it really digs into race, identity, and ingrained prejudice in a small town. Quite ahead of its time in some ways.
It feels like we could spend hours just on the novels, but he also wrote essays and short stories.
And powerful ones, too. Things like The War Prayer.
Oh, that's a searing critique of blind patriotism. Still relevant.
Absolutely. Or The Man That Corrupted Hadleyburg, which is this brilliant exposure of human greed and hypocrisy.
He wasn't afraid to point out society's flaws, was he?
Not at all. Hypocrisy was a major target for him, and his tool was often satire. You see that in essays like On the Decay of the Art of Lying.
Which is itself, ironically, quite witty and clever.
Exactly. He uses humor to make these very serious points hit home.
But despite that critical eye, you also sense a real empathy underneath it all.
Definitely. A deep empathy for humanity, especially for, ordinary folks. Children, too.
And he backed it up with action, didn't he? His stance against slavery, against imperialism.
Strong stances. And later in life, supporting women's rights, early civil rights leaders. He was quite progressive for his era in many ways.
His whole philosophy seems to be about questioning authority, finding humor in absurdity, but also just basic kindness.
I think that sums it up well. Those ideas still resonate, don't they?
They really do.
And that humor. It was never just jokes for joke's sake. It was a tool.
His quote about laughter being humanity's most effective weapon.
That's the one. It encapsulates his approach. Even simple, witty lines often had a deeper truth, like, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. Simple but profound.
Let's touch on his personal life a bit. His marriage to Olivia Langdon.
Livy, yes, that seems to have been a very central relationship for him, a source of great happiness.
But also marked by profound loss.
Sadly, yes. They lost several children, and eventually Livy herself passed away before him. You can see the impact of that grief, that melancholy in his later writing. It becomes, much more somber at times.
And despite his fame and success as a writer, he had money troubles.
He did. Some bad investments, I believe. He actually went bankrupt at one point.
Wow. But he didn't just give up.
No, quite the opposite. He embarked on this massive global lecture tour, specifically to pay back every single one of his creditors.
That says a lot about his character, his resilience.
It really does. It speaks to his public persona, too. He was a showman.
Definitely. That distinctive white suit, the wild hair, he cultivated an image.
He knew how to work a crowd. His lectures were apparently incredibly popular all over the world. He was a global celebrity.
There are so many fascinating little facts about him, too. The Halley's Comet connection.
Isn't that incredible? Born shortly after its appearance in 1835, died the day after it reappeared in 1910.
And he predicted it, didn't he? Something like, I came in with Halley's Comet, I expect to go out with it.
He did. Spooky, almost. And other things. He was an early adopter of the typewriter.
Really? Interesting.
Loved cats, apparently. Vehemently anti-imperialist. He even invented a board game, though it wasn't very successful.
Ah, a board game inventor, too. He really contained multitude.
He did. That mix of humor and sadness, the public figure versus the private man, the intense curiosity. It makes him endlessly fascinating.
So bringing it all together, why should people learning English today still bother with Mark Twain? What's the value there?
Oh, immense value, I'd say. First, the stories themselves are just timeless. Adventures, moral questions, humor, they still grab you.
And the language.
It's rich, yes, but often surprisingly accessible, especially in works like Tom Sawyer. It gives you such a fantastic window into American culture, history, and different ways of speaking.
And that encouragement towards critical thinking seems more relevant than ever.
Absolutely. Questioning the status quo, looking deeper, that's a skill Twain champions, and it's always valuable.
Well, this has been quite a journey through the remarkable life and enduring works of Mark Twain.
It really has. His stories offer so much entertainment, insight into human nature, social commentary.
And for our listeners, a fantastic way to engage with rich, varied, and historically significant English.
Definitely. We'd certainly encourage you, if you haven't already, to explore Twain's world.
Where's a good place to start?
Tom Sawyer is probably the most accessible entry point. Then maybe tackle Huck Finn.
And don't be afraid to use tools, right? Dictionaries, maybe audiobooks to help with the dialects.
Absolutely. And don't get too discouraged by the dialects in Huck Finn. Take your time with it. Maybe discuss it with others that can really deepen your understanding.
His legacy as really a foundational figure in American literature is undeniable.
It truly is. His stories are still read, adapted, referenced constantly. The power of his words endures.
Perhaps we can leave our listeners with Twain's own invitation.
Explore, dream, discover.
His works are certainly a wonderful place to start doing just that.
Indeed they are.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into Mark Twain's life and works, please do like this video, share it with others who might be interested, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel.
We'll have more explorations of language and literature coming your way. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
Hi there.
Today we're diving deep into a truly celebrated piece of American writing, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain.
Ah, yes. Published back in 1876, this book gives you a really fascinating look into childhood, adventure, and just the fundamentals of human nature, really.
It is.
All set along the Mississippi River in that fictional town, St. Petersburg, Missouri.
Exactly. So think of this as our exploration to really kind of get to the heart of this story. We want to understand its lasting importance in literature and, why it still connects with readers today.
Especially for those learning English, right?
Definitely. We'll be looking at Twain's unique way of telling a story, the significant ideas he brings up, and some of his most memorable moments.
Well, at its core, it's a coming-of-age story filled with, humor and excitement.
Lots of excitement.
And it takes place in this small rural town, which was apparently inspired by Twain's own childhood.
Right. And we meet Tom Sawyer. He's this really spirited and pretty clever boy, living with his Aunt Polly, his half-brother Sid, and cousin Mary.
And we follow Tom through all these different episodes. Involves pranks, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
A bit of young romance, treasure hunts.
The treasure hunts.
And even witnessing a pretty serious crime.
Yeah, that takes a turn. And through all that, Twain looks at these big universal themes, doesn't he? Like independence, morality, right and wrong.
And that tricky balance between, just being yourself and fitting in with everyone else, society's expectations.
Yeah. What about the language itself?
The language. Well, it's this interesting mix, isn't it? You've got straightforward storytelling, but also really descriptive parts. And it really reflects the American English of the 19th century. So it's a great chance to sort of engage with the language of that time.
One of the first things you notice, I think, is Twain's tone. It's often really lighthearted, quite funny.
Definitely playful. It mirrors Tom's mischievous side, through these exaggerated stories about his antics.
Like trying to get out of school.
Or tricking his friends into whitewashing that fence for him. Classic.
It really draws you in, that humor.
But it's interesting, that playful style often blends with this feeling of nostalgia looking back.
Yeah, you feel that.
Twain, writing as an adult, he looks back at childhood with real fondness, but also a little bit of irony, maybe.
A touch of irony, yeah.
And he uses such vivid language. You really picture the Mississippi, the slow pace of the town. It gives it this timeless feel.
Yeah, it does. And, like you said, underneath the fun, there's that layer of social commentary, too. He's quite subtly critiquing things.
He is. Societal norms, institutions like religion, education, even the justice system sometimes.
And he often uses humor to do it.
Yeah.
Right? To point out serious issues or, the hypocrisy he saw in the adult world.
Exactly. And if you dig into that a bit more, you see how he uses regional dialects and, informal speech.
Oh, yeah. The way people talk.
It makes it feel really authentic, conversational. The characters speak in the vernacular of the American South back then. Slang, everyday phrases. It tells you a lot about their background, their social standing.
Which is actually really useful for English learners, seeing language used in that specific context.
Absolutely.
So, okay, let's shift a bit to his actual writing style, his method. It feels simple in a way, but also really expressive.
It is. The prose is quite accessible, I think, even if you're still learning English. But he still uses this rich, descriptive language to paint these vivid pictures.
The river, yeah. And the caves.
Oh, the caves, definitely, where all the drama happens.
And so much of the story and the humor comes through the dialogue, doesn't it?
It really does. The conversations just bring the characters to life. You really get Tom's quick wit, Huck's more sort of laid-back way of talking.
And Polly's frustration.
Exactly, all through how they talk to each other. It's great practice for listening and even speaking skills.
Yeah, definitely. And the structure of the book. It's quite episodic, isn't it? Like a series of adventures loosely strung together.
Which actually makes the plot easier to follow, I think. Each chapter almost feels like its own little story.
But they're all tied together by Tom growing up and those recurring themes.
Yeah.
Friendship, morality, adventure.
And that brings us to something else he does really well. Using irony and exaggeration.
Oh, yes.
He uses those tools a lot to, boost the humor and the social commentary we talked about.
Like Tom's incredibly dramatic declarations of love for Becky Thatcher.
Totally. Or his, over-the-top fears about Injun Joe. It adds this comedic layer that's fun, but it also helps you spot those literary techniques.
So let's talk about some of those big themes then. They still feel relevant, don't they?
They really do. Across cultures, across time. I mean, the central one is probably just childhood, the joys, but also the challenges.
Right. You see the freedom, the imagination in Tom's adventures, playing pirates, digging for treasure, exploring the caves.
It celebrates that youthful spirit, but it doesn't ignore the tough parts of growing up either, like dealing with adult expectations or facing moral choices.
Learners can probably identify with Tom wanting independence, trying to balance fun and, responsibility.
Definitely. And another huge theme is morality, conscience.
Yeah, Tom's journey involves figuring out right and wrong, especially that big moment when he and Huck witness the murder.
And they have to decide whether to speak up, knowing the danger. Twain seems to show morality as something you learn through living it, through experience.
Not just something you're told.
Right.
Right.
And tied into that is this theme of freedom versus conformity, or you see it all through the book.
That contrast between childhood freedom and, society's rules and restrictions. Tom and Huck constantly push against adult rules.
And Twain subtly critiques those rigid social structures through them.
Friendship and loyalty are huge too, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely central. Tom's bonds with Huck, with Joe Harper, even with Becky Thatcher, they drive so much of the action.
It highlights trust, teamwork, all of that.
And we should also mention the social commentary again, maybe more directly. Through his satirical lens, Twain does critique aspects of 19th century America.
Things like racism, class differences, superstition.
Yeah. Now, fully getting some of those critiques might need a bit of historical context for modern readers or learners.
Sure.
But it's a chance to explore cultural differences and historical perspectives.
And the book is just packed with memorable lines, quotes that give you insight into these themes in Twain's language.
Oh, definitely. Like, the less there is to justify a traditional custom, the harder it is to get rid of it.
Yes, that's pure Twain satire on just blindly following tradition without asking why.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Why do we hold on to things even when the reason is gone? It's great for learners to see satire in action and maybe discuss cultural norms.
Then there's the famous one from the fence scene. He had discovered a great law of human action, namely, that in order to make a man or a boy covet a thing, it is only necessary to make the thing difficult to attain.
Such a sharp observation about human psychology. Persuasion, making things seem valuable.
It's basically scarcity marketing, isn't it? Even today. Twain nails this fundamental truth about motivation in that simple story.
He really does. It's so concisely put. A lesson in human nature that just doesn't get old.
And who doesn't love? There comes a time in every rightly constructed boy's life when he has a raging desire to go somewhere and dig for hidden treasure.
It just captures that universal childhood dream of adventure and discovery so perfectly.
Yeah, the rightly constructed boy bit is funny too, like it's just built in.
It feels very relatable, that urge for adventure.
There's also that simple line, well, everybody does it that way, Huck.
Short, but says so much about the pressure to conform. Just go along with the crowd.
Yeah, that theme pops up again and again. It really shows the power of peer pressure, just doing what's accepted, even if it feels off. Good discussion point.
Definitely. And lastly, that wonderfully ironic bit with Aunt Polly after the fence painting.
Oh, yes. She was so overcome by the splendor of his achievement that she took him, selected a choice apple, along with an improving lecture upon the added value a treat took when it came without sin through virtuous effort.
The irony is just delicious. She has absolutely no idea he tricked everyone.
None. The improving lecture and virtuous effort are the complete opposite of what happened. It's just brilliant satire, verbal irony at its best.
It really is. Perfect example of his wit.
So thinking about English learners specifically, this book really is a goldmine, isn't it?
It truly is. You get such rich vocabulary across all sorts of themes: daily life, adventure, abstract ideas.
And it gives you this really valuable context for 19th century American culture. You see how language was used back then?
Yeah, that historical and social context is so helpful.
And the episodic structure, we mentioned that. It can actually help with reading comprehension, right? Breaking it down into smaller chunks.
Definitely more manageable. And all that dialogue. It's fantastic material for practicing listening, understanding different ways of speaking, maybe even practicing speaking those different voices.
Exposure to different vernaculars. Plus, the themes are so universal, they just naturally spark discussion. Thinking about your own opinions, expressing them.
Which is crucial for language development. And spotting Twain's literary devices, the irony, the exaggeration helps you understand those deeper meanings, the subtleties.
Now, obviously, there might be a few hurdles for learners starting out. The regional dialects, for instance.
That's true. They can be a bit tricky at first, but, using a glossary or talking about them can actually be a fantastic way to learn more vocabulary and understand language variation.
Good point. And the historical setting might need a little unpacking for some readers.
Sure, but doing a little research or asking questions just makes the whole reading experience richer. You understand the references, the setting better.
Some of Twain's sentences can get a bit complex sometimes, too.
They can, but tackling those, breaking them down into smaller pieces, is actually really good practice for grammar and comprehension skills.
And while it's often seen as a children's book, it does touch on some heavier themes.
It does. Things like the violence, the social issues. But with some guidance, maybe in a classroom setting or a discussion group, exploring those can be really valuable, leading to deeper analysis.
So all in all, why is this book so valuable for English learners?
Well, first off, the story is just really engaging and funny. That keeps you reading.
Motivation is key.
Exactly. And it has this great mix of simpler language and richer, more descriptive stuff, so it offers a good, balanced challenge.
Plus, you get genuine insight into American history and values from that time, important cultural context.
And it's just so versatile for language learning activities. Reading, writing about it, discussing it, listening to audio versions.
Very practical.
And finally, I think the themes are just timeless and relatable. No matter where you're from, you can likely connect with Tom's experiences on some level.
That's a great summary. We really hope this deep dive into the Adventures of Tom Sawyer has sparked your curiosity and given you a valuable perspective on this classic.
Yeah, from all of Tom's mischief to Twain's really sharp commentary, the book offers such a rich experience of language, culture, and, well, human nature.
So whether you're already a big reader or just starting your English learning journey, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer really does promise both a good time and some great learning opportunities.
Definitely worth picking up.
Absolutely. And hey, remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more explorations into the world of literature and language learning. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
Great to be here.
So today we're diving deep into a truly monumental piece of American literature. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain.
That's right. Published way back in 1884.
And it's often called the great American novel, isn't it? We're going to try and unpack, why exactly.
Yeah, why this story about a boy, Huck, and an enslaved man, Jim, traveling down the Mississippi keeps grabbing people.
It's got so much insight even today.
It really does. And it's not just like a simple adventure story.
No, not at all.
It's more like stepping into 19th century America. You see it all through the eyes of this kid, Huck Finn.
A very particular viewpoint. He's running away from his abusive father?
Exactly. And he bumps into Jim, who's also escaping slavery. So they end up on this raft together.
It's like this historical snapshot, but wrapped up in a journey. A really compelling one.
Definitely. A journey down the Mississippi.
And Mark Twain, Samuel Langhorne Clemens, his real name. He was just brilliant at social commentary, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. A master. He's writing after the Civil War, looking back critically at American society, with a lot of wit, too.
Right. And this book, Huckleberry Finn, it falls into that literary movement called realism.
Yeah, realism, which, aimed to show life how it really was. No sugarcoating.
Not the romanticized stuff.
Not at all. And what was so revolutionary was Huck's voice. His narration.
How so?
Well, the whole story is told by him, in his own words. Informal, young.
Yeah.
It just makes the whole thing feel incredibly real, immediate.
Like he's talking right to you.
Precisely. And that conversational style, that's totally key to the book's impact, I think.
It makes even the serious stuff more engaging somehow.
It does. Twain uses humor, satire, irony. He pokes fun at the adults, at society's hypocrisies. It keeps you hooked.
And the descriptions, the river, the landscape.
Oh, amazing. So vivid. You really get a sense of place. The Mississippi River, it's more than just a setting. It's almost like another character.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, thinking about that authentic voice, the language, for someone learning English, this book is, it's something else.
It really is. A unique opportunity, but maybe a challenge, too.
Right. It's full of regional dialects from the 1800s, the way people actually spoke.
You hear Huck saying things like, ain't, and Jim's speech. It reflects the specific dialect of enslaved African Americans at that time.
Which can be tough to get your head around initially.
Sure. But it's also a chance to hear, authentic historical English, to see how language varies.
A real window into the past, linguistically speaking.
Definitely. And beyond the language, the themes it tackles are just so profound.
Freedom is huge, obviously.
Central. Absolutely central. Huck wants freedom from, society's rules and his dad.
And Jim wants freedom from slavery. Fundamental freedom.
And the river becomes this powerful symbol for that escape, doesn't it?
Yeah, floating away from it all.
That constant movement. No rigid rules on the raft, unlike on shore.
And Huck's internal struggle. That's fascinating too. His conscience.
Oh, constantly. He's wrestling with what society tells him is right versus what he feels is right, especially about Jim.
That conflict is so raw.
And the book is unflinching about the hypocrisy of the time. A society claiming morality but allowing slavery, cruelty.
It really holds up a mirror.
It does. But then at the core, you have this bond between Huck and Jim.
Yeah, that friendship.
It just highlights basic human connection, cutting through all those societal barriers. Really powerful stuff.
Let's talk about the characters for a sec. Huck himself.
Resourceful kid, independent. And because he's sort of innocent, Twain uses his perspective to critique the adult world sharply.
And
Jim shows incredible wisdom, compassion, loyalty, despite facing just awful hardship.
Their friendship really is the emotional anchor, isn't it?
Completely. And then you meet others, like Tom Sawyer.
Tom. More imaginative, maybe.
Definitely imaginative, but sometimes impractical. His schemes often contrast with Huck's more grounded approach.
And then those con men. The King of the Duke.
Ugh, yeah. They really show the darker side of things. Exploitation, gullibility.
They expose a lot about human nature, not always pretty.
Not pretty at all, but memorable. And speaking of memorable, there are some lines in the book that just stick with you.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, that famous moment when Huck decides to help Jim, even if it means eternal damnation according to society's rules. He says, "All right, then I'll go to hell."
Wow. That's a huge turning point for him, choosing his own morality.
Absolutely. And later, reflecting on the raft, he says something like, "We said there weren't no home like a raft after all."
Capturing that sense of freedom, belonging, away from everything else.
Yeah. Then there's that stark observation, just human beings can be awful cruel to one another.
Oof. Timeless, unfortunately.
Sadly, yes. And Jim's simple words like, "I'm mighty glad to get out of that place," it just says so much about his longing for freedom, his strengths.
His resilience.
And maybe one more, that moment where Huck apologizes to Jim. It's complex because his inner thoughts still show prejudice.
All right, the ingrained stuff is still there.
But the act itself, apologizing, recognizing Jim's humanity, it shows Huck's growth, his journey. It's messy, but it's progress.
So, okay, we've mentioned the dialects, the history. It might seem a bit daunting for English learners.
It can be, no doubt.
But the payoff seems huge. What are the real benefits, would you say?
Well, first, you're getting exposed to authentic historical language. That's invaluable.
Okay.
Second, the story itself. It's an adventure. It keeps you reading.
True, it's very engaging.
Third, the insights into American culture and history at a really crucial time. You learn so much.
Develops cultural understanding.
Definitely. Fourth, analyzing the themes, the characters, that really builds your critical thinking skills in any language, but especially useful when learning English.
Makes sense.
And finally, the moral questions it raises. They can lead to some really fantastic discussions. Makes you think.
Yeah, sparks conversation. So overall, it sounds like despite the challenges, it's incredibly worthwhile.
Hugely worthwhile. Huckleberry Finn is just... It remains so powerful, so relevant.
It really pushes you to think about freedom, morality, society, all through this incredible story of Huck and Jim.
Exactly. Their journey down the river becomes our journey, too, in a way.
Well, we really hope this deep dive has sparked some curiosity for you, maybe encouraged you to pick up this classic novel or revisit it.
And hopefully it's also helped a bit with understanding English and American literature along the way.
Absolutely. So if you found this exploration insightful, please do give us a like, share it with others who might be interested.
And definitely subscribe to the channel. We'll have more literary deep dives coming up.
Thanks for joining us on the Learn English Lab. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
Hi there.
Today we're doing a deep dive into a real classic, Mark Twain's The Prince and the Pauper.
Ah, yes. Fantastic story.
It really is. And we're not just going to skim the surface.
Yeah.
We want to really unpack what makes it so enduring and why it's such a great read, especially maybe you're learning English.
Definitely. At its heart, it's this amazing tale of two boys in, 16th century England.
That's right, Tudor England.
Yeah, Tom Canty, who's, really poor, living rough in London, and Edward Tudor, the actual Prince of Wales. And they look incredibly alike.
Spitting image, apparently. And through this, completely unexpected twist, they end up switching places.
And living each other's lives. Wildly different lives, obviously.
So our goal today is to dig into how Twain actually writes this, the sort of literary tools he uses.
Well, there's the themes, too. There's a lot going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. Uncover some of those deeper ideas, maybe pull out a few memorable
Oh,
quotes.
what are some great ones?
And basically figure out why this novel is, well, just such a worthwhile read.
Sounds good. Where should we start? Maybe with Twain's writing itself, the tone.
Yeah, let's do that. Because it's interesting, isn't it? It's Twain, so you expect maybe nonstop humor.
Right, like Huck Finn or Tom Sawyer.
But here he blends the humor with irony, satire, and a surprising amount of compassion, I think.
He really does. And the overall style is, well, deliberately more formal, isn't it? More historical feeling.
To match the setting, yeah. He wants to immerse you in that 16th century world.
But you still get that unmistakable Twain voice coming through, clever, observant, a bit critical.
And sympathetic, too. It makes it really engaging, but also makes you think.
And the language itself, he uses that older style.
Oh, yeah, the thou and thee and hath.
Exactly, which can be a bit of a hurdle at first, maybe.
Perhaps, but it does so much for the atmosphere. It really puts you in that time period.
And it's a good learning opportunity, seeing those older forms. Context usually makes it pretty clear what's meant.
Yeah, usually. Like that great line from Edward when he's dressed as Tom and trying to boss people around.
Oh, yes. I am the king. Wilt thou not obey me?
Perfect example. So formal, so princely, even when he's in rags.
And it highlights those language differences, doesn't it? Thou for you, wilt for will. Learners can really see that evolution.
But it's not just the language, it's how he uses it. The satire is quite sharp, but subtle too.
He's definitely critiquing the social system. The massive gap between rich and poor.
And the silliness of it all sometimes.
Yeah.
Both in the royal court and down in the streets.
Absolutely. Like when Tom, the pauper boy, is suddenly treated as the prince.
Yeah.
And all the courtiers just instantly obey his every whim, no matter how strange.
Yeah.
It shows how ridiculous that kind of blind obedience to rank can be.
Right. And on the flip side, Edward's experiences as a pauper show just how brutal and unfair life was for ordinary people.
So the satire isn't just for laughs, it's really exposing flaws in the society.
How does understanding that satire help, do you think? Especially for someone learning the language.
Well, I think understanding irony and satire is a huge part of getting the nuances of English. It's about reading between the lines.
Seeing the difference between what's said and what's meant.
Exactly. It develops critical thinking. You grasp the tone better, understand the author's real message. It's not just about the words on the page.
That makes sense. But beyond the satire, there's also this real current of compassion.
Oh, definitely. He doesn't shy away from showing the suffering of the poor. He makes you feel it.
Makes you question the fairness of it all, like when Edward sees the harsh punishments.
Yes. And he has that moment of realization, vowing to be a merciful king if he ever gets back.
That moral core is really powerful, I find. It lists the story.
It does. And it encourages you, the reader, to think about those ethical questions too.
Think about how Twain describes Tom's early life. Something like,
hunger was his constant companion, and cold and darkness were his home.
Yeah, that's the one. It's simple language, isn't it? But it's so effective.
Very accessible for learners, but it lands with real emotional weight. Shows how powerful simple words can be.
Okay, so that's the tone and style. What about the way the story is put together, the structure?
It's actually pretty straightforward, which is helpful.
Linear, mostly. Clear, beginning, middle, end.
Right. No complex flashbacks or multiple timelines, really. It makes it easy to follow the main thread.
It's divided into, 33 chapters?
Something like that. And each chapter tends to focus on specific steps in Tom's or Edward's journey.
And he alternates between them. Right, that parallel structure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is key. You constantly see the contrast, Tom trying to figure out how to be royal, Edward trying to survive being poor.
It really highlights the differences in their worlds, but also some surprising similarities in their experiences, maybe.
Sometimes, yeah. So the beginning sets it all up, introduces the boys, their different lives, the accidental meeting.
The clothes swap out of curiosity.
And boom, mistaken identity. Then the middle section is all about their struggles in these new roles.
Tom navigating the crazy court life. Edward facing hardship, but also meeting Miles Hendon.
Miles Hendon, great character. We'll come back to him.
Definitely. And then the end brings it all together. The identities are revealed.
Edward becomes king, and there's that reflection on what they've learned, especially about justice and mercy.
So that clear structure is really a plus for learners, you think?
Absolutely. You can track the plot, see the cause and effect, follow character development. It makes discussion easier, too. You can pinpoint specific moments.
And Twain keeps the pace moving nicely. It balances the serious bits with humor and action.
Keeps you hooked. You want to know if they'll ever get back to their real lives.
That engagement factor is important when you're reading in another language. Keeps you motivated.
Totally. And the themes he explores are pretty universal, too, which helps.
Let's talk about those themes.
Yes.
The big one has to be identity, right?
Mm.
And this role reversal.
Absolutely central. Living each other's lives gives them and us this incredible insight into different social classes.
It makes you ponder those big questions like, how much does our upbringing shape us?
Can we ever really walk in someone else's shoes?
Then there's the critique of social inequality. Twain really lays bare the stark divide in 16th century England.
Yeah, Edward's journey is a real eye-opener for him, seeing the poverty, the unfair laws.
It makes you reflect on fairness and justice even today, doesn't it?
It does. Which leads to the theme of justice and mercy. Edward's transformation is key here.
From this somewhat naive, privileged prince to someone who understands suffering and wants to rule with compassion.
His vow to change the harsh laws, that really sticks with you.
So what's the takeaway there for learners engaging with that theme?
Well, it prompts thought about leadership qualities, the importance of empathy, considering different sides before judging. It's fertile ground for discussion on ethics.
And we can't forget friendship and loyalty.
Yes. Edward and Miles Hendon.
Their bond is wonderful. Miles sticking by Edward even when he thinks the boy is, well, completely delusional.
It adds such warmth and heart to the story, amongst all the hardship and satire. A great example of true loyalty.
Provides good discussion points to what makes a good friend.
Definitely. And the characters themselves are so well drawn. Analyzing them is great for vocabulary and comprehension.
Let's start with Tom Canty. He's fundamentally decent, isn't he? Kind, imaginative.
Yeah, he dreams of a better life, but he's not malicious. He's adaptable, surprisingly so, navigating the court.
But stays humble underneath it all. You see him grow from this scared pauper kid into someone who can sort of handle being a prince.
Then there's Edward. Starts off privileged, maybe a bit arrogant or naive.
Sheltered, certainly.
But his time as a pauper teaches him so much. Empathy, resilience.
And that contrast between his royal speech and his actual vulnerability is fascinating.
Makes him very human. And Miles Hendon.
The loyal soldier. Honorable, bit world-weary maybe. Got his own tragic backstory.
Right. But his interactions with Edward provide so much humor, that sort of dry wit.
Comic relief, definitely. And even the minor characters add a lot. Tom's awful father, the scheming courtiers, the suffering common folk, they all flesh out the world and reinforce the theme.
Yeah, it's a rich cast.
So putting it all together, what are the big insights we get from the book?
Well, the power of perspective is huge. Both boys gain understanding only because they live a different life.
Forces them to see things they never would have otherwise. A great lesson in empathy.
And it highlights the fragility or maybe the superficiality of social hierarchy.
How easily they're mistaken for each other, just based on clothes.
Exactly. It suggests status can be skin deep, makes you question those rigid structures.
And then there's the importance of compassion, especially in leadership, shown through Edward's change.
Which feels very relevant even now, connecting to ideas of social justice.
And we mentioned the humor. It makes heavy themes accessible.
Yes, it keeps it from becoming too preachy. And for learners, humor is often tied to cultural understanding, idiomatic language.
Good point. Let's touch on some of those memorable quotes. They really capture these ideas.
Okay, how about that one from Miles Hendon to Edward, the one about nobility?
Oh, yeah. Kings cannot ennoble thee, thou good, great soul.
For one who is higher than kings hath done that for thee, but a king can confirm thy nobility to men.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Especially since Miles thinks Edward is just some poor, crazy kid at that point.
Right. He sees the boy's inherent goodness, his nobility of character, regardless of rank, and noble meaning to give honor, confirm, like verify it to the world.
So true worth comes from within, not from titles. Great vocabulary there, too.
Then there's Edward's own resolution. When I am king, they shall not have bread and shelter only, but also teachings out of books.
For a full belly is little worth where the mind is starved.
He says this after seeing the ignorance that goes along with poverty. He realizes education is vital.
Full belly. Nice idiom for being fed. And he has starved mind. Powerful metaphor for lack of knowledge. Shows his growth.
Definitely. And remember, when he confronts the nobleman,
What dost thou know of suffering and oppression? I and my people know, but not thou.
Oof, that hits hard. Spoken as a pauper, experiencing it firsthand. Dost is due, oppression is that unjust treatment. He's claiming that lived experience.
And his reflection on the system itself.
The world is made wrong. Kings should go to school to their own laws at times, and so learn mercy.
Made wrong, meaning flawed. And the idea of kings going to school to their laws, learning by experiencing their effects, it's about justice needing mercy.
Beautifully put. Captures that theme perfectly.
And just for fun, that little aside from Twain himself.
Oh, the laughter one.
Yeah, laughter is the best medicine. Unless you're really sick, then you should probably see a doctor.
Classic Twain. That wry humor, playing with a common saying, shows his voice breaking through the narrative.
So bringing it back to English learners, what are the specific benefits of tackling this book?
Well, vocabulary is a big one. You get everyday words, but also that more formal, slightly archaic language, a real range.
Widens your scope. And the clear plot helps with reading comprehension.
Definitely. Plus, the themes are so rich. Great for sparking discussion, practicing speaking, sharing your own opinions.
And writing, too, I imagine. You could write descriptions, persuasive pieces about the themes, maybe even your own role swap story.
Good idea. And you get that cultural and historical context, a window into Tudor England.
Okay, but let's be honest. There are challenges. That older language.
Sure, thou and hath might seem daunting at first. And understanding the historical setting takes a little effort.
But those aren't reasons to avoid it, right?
Not at all. They're actually opportunities. Looking up words, learning about the history that deepens your understanding of English and the past. It's active learning.
Yeah, overcoming those small hurdles is part of the process. Makes it more rewarding.
And tackling complex themes like social inequality within the story makes them perhaps more approachable than just reading an essay about them.
Maybe even reading bits aloud could help. Get the rhythm of the language.
Excellent suggestion. Helps with pronunciation and fluency.
So, overall, it feels like The Prince and the Pauper is much more than just a kid's story or a simple historical tale.
Oh, absolutely. It's this rich tapestry language, social commentary, timeless human experiences, all woven together.
It really encourages you to think about different perspectives, question how society is structured.
And appreciate the value of empathy and compassion.
Through Twain's unique blend of humor, seriousness, and that sharp observation.
It's a rewarding read on so many levels, whether you want to boost your English, explore classic literature, or just lose yourself in a great story.
Couldn't agree more. It gives you vocabulary, comprehension practice, speaking topics, writing ideas, cultural insights.
And those lasting themes, identity, justice, perspective, they stick with you.
Well, we hope this deep dive has maybe shed some light on why it's such a special book and maybe sparked your interest to pick it up or revisit it.
We really do. It offers so much.
Thank you for joining us in the Learn English Lab for this exploration.
Thanks for listening.
And if you found this discussion insightful, please do like this video, share it with others who might be interested, and subscribe to the channel.
Yep, subscribe for more deep dives into language and literature. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
Great to be here.
Today, we're diving deep into a really fascinating piece of American literature. Mark Twain's The Diaries of Adam and Eve. It's his humorous and honestly pretty insightful take on the first couple.
It really is. And it's important to stress, like you said, this isn't really about religion, is it?
Not at all. It's about Twain using their supposed diaries to look at, timeless human stuff, relationships, differences, that sort of thing.
Exactly. We're aiming to appreciate the writing, sure, but also pull out insights about language, humor, relationships, all in a way that's hopefully easy to follow.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly is this book?
Okay, so it's a fictional work, obviously. It presents Adam and Eve's perspectives through diary entries they supposedly kept.
Right, so you get his side and her side?
Precisely. It's divided into extracts from Adam's diary and then Eve's diary. They were actually published separately at first, Adam's way back in 1893 and Eve's later, 1905, before being put together.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize they were separate initially.
Yeah, and the core of it really is satire and humanism.
Yeah.
It explores gender differences, how love might develop, curiosity, the whole human experience, basically. But definitely not a religious text.
And the style? Is it heavy going?
Not at all. That's one of his charms. It's written in a very conversational, accessible style, easy to get into.
Okay. And you mentioned Twain wrote this quite a while ago, late 19th, early 20th century. Does that historical backdrop matter?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Twain himself was going through personal stuff, professional changes.
Right.
And America at the time. You had industrialization booming, big social changes happening, lots of discussion about gender roles.
So that kind of seeps into the story.
Subtly, yeah. You can sort of feel those debates about men and women, their roles, bubbling under the surface in how Adam and Eve interact. He plays with those ideas.
Interesting. Let's talk about the structure then, these two separate diaries. How does that work in practice?
It's crucial. Having both perspectives side by side is where a lot of the magic happens. You see the same events, like completely differently.
So Adam's diary, what's his like?
Adam's entries are, well, short, often blunt. He comes across as practical, maybe a bit grumpy sometimes.
Ah, yeah.
His language is simple, direct. He's often confused or just plain irritated by Eve. He calls her the new creature at first, complains about her talking, her naming things.
Right. She is always naming things, and it is a nuisance, that kind of vibe.
Exactly that. Total exasperation sometimes.
And Eve's diary, a total contrast, I imagine.
Completely. Hers are longer, much more reflective, almost poetic. You really feel her curiosity, her imagination. She uses more emotional language. She's fascinated by the world, trying to figure it all out. She thinks a lot about Adam, about nature, her own purpose.
So putting those two together.
It creates humor, definitely. Adam's sort of stoic grumbling next to Eve's wide-eyed wonder. But it's also Twain commenting on gender differences, how differently people can experience the exact same reality.
It sounds like it would be good for language learners, too. Adam's simple sentences versus Eve's richer prose.
Absolutely. Adam's bits are great for grasping straightforward expression, while Eve introduces more complex vocabulary and descriptive language. A nice balance.
Okay, let's talk about the overall tone. You mentioned humor, but there's more to it.
Oh yeah, it's a real blend. There's humor, satire, but also a surprising amount of tenderness.
How does the humor work mainly?
A lot comes from exaggerating those differences, playing with stereotypes about men and women. Adam baffled by the endless talking, Eve's intense need to name everything.
Right, familiar tropes, but done with affection.
Exactly. It's not mean-spirited. There's real warmth, especially in Eve's entries. Her love for Adam, her awe in Eden, it feels genuine.
And the satire, what's Twain poking fun at?
Human foolishness, mostly. Our little vanities, communication breakdowns, the need to control things, but underlying it all is this real affection for humanity, despite our quirks.
So you can really see how the tone shapes the meaning. Focusing on, say, adjectives and adverbs could show that. Like Adam finding something annoying, while Eve finds it beautiful.
Precisely. Analyzing that specific word choice reveals so much about their different outlooks and the overall tone Twain is crafting.
Let's dig into the big ideas then, the core themes. Gender differences seem central.
Absolutely key. Twain exaggerates their personalities to highlight stereotypes, Adam, logical, likes being alone, focused on tasks. Eve, emotional, social, intensely curious.
And this leads to misunderstandings.
Oh, definitely. Comedic ones, mostly. Adam gets annoyed when she rearranges things. Eve can't understand why he wants to be left alone sometimes. Classic stuff.
But it's not just about conflict, is it?
Not at all. He shows that these differences actually make them, well, complementary. They grow because of each other, and eventually this deep love develops. Adam's final realization about Eden being wherever Eve was, that says it all.
That's powerful. What's another major theme?
Curiosity and the desire for knowledge. That's huge, especially for Eve.
She's the driving force there.
Very much so. Her constant naming, exploring, trying to understand fire, questioning everything, it embodies that human drive.
Oh.
And crucially, Twain seems to frame this curiosity, even the part that leads to the fall, as necessary for growth, not just a sin.
So he reinterprets that whole event.
He does. It's less about disobedience and more about the inevitable human impulse to know, to experience. Adam starts off incurious, just focused on survival, but even he gets drawn into it through Eve. Her curiosity is almost contagious.
That's a fascinating take. And this leads into the theme of love and companionship, right?
Yes, it's a central thread.
Yeah.
You watch their relationship evolve from, frankly, mutual annoyance and confusion to this incredibly deep affection and reliance on each other. Eve's diary often reflects on her love for Adam, even when he's being difficult.
And Adam comes around eventually.
Completely. His final diary entry after she's gone is just heartbreaking. It's the ultimate testament to how much he came to love and need her. It shows love isn't instant. It grows, even through friction.
We touched on satire earlier. How does that weave into these themes?
Twain uses humor to gently satirize our tendencies. human pride, the way we miscommunicate, our need to label and control everything.
Like Adam getting annoyed about naming the animals.
Exactly. It's funny, but it also says something about our urge to impose order, sometimes ridiculously. It adds that layer of witty observation without being cynical.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly to the language itself. How does Twain use literary devices? You mentioned it's accessible, but still rich.
He's a master craftsman. Irony is everywhere. The difference between what a character says and what the situation implies, like Adam complaining Eve, makes things complicated.
When maybe he's the one being difficult.
Right. Or exaggeration. He definitely exaggerates Eve's talkativeness or Adam's taciturn nature for comic effect. It highlights their opposing traits.
And personification. You mentioned Eve does that.
Yes, especially Eve. She gives human qualities to nature. The stars are fireflies, the moon is a friend. It shows her imaginative connection to the world and adds beauty to her entries.
Does he use informal language too?
Yeah, quite a bit, especially with Adam. Colloquialisms, simpler sentence structures, maybe a bit of slang for the time. It makes their voices feel authentic, like real diary entries, not formal prose.
So analyzing these devices, irony, exaggeration, personification, colloquial language is key for understanding.
Definitely. For language learners, spotting these is a great practice, but for any reader, it just deepens the appreciation of how Twain achieves his effects.
Let's revisit Adam's perspective more closely. How does he evolve?
He starts off just bewildered, maybe a bit put out by this new creature disrupting his peace. His focus is purely practical: shelter, food, avoiding trouble.
Pretty basic.
Very. But gradually his tone softens. You see glimpses of appreciation, grudging respect maybe, then dependence, and finally, undeniable love. That final entry.
Wheresoever she was, there was Eden.
That one. It shows a complete transformation. From indifference to realizing she was his paradise. For learners, his early stuff is simple vocabulary, but later entries have real emotional depth.
And Eve. What's the essence of her perspective?
Eve is really the emotional core. Her diary is full of wonder, intense curiosity, and this powerful capacity for love. She paints Eden with vivid imagery. Sunrise is a riot of color,
That poetic quality you mentioned.
Exactly. Her curiosity is relentless. She investigates fire, she has to name things, she questions why things are the way they are. This drives the plot forward.
And her view of the fall.
In Twain's hands, it comes across less as a sin and more as an act of courage, maybe, a desire for knowledge that outweighs the risks. And through it all, her love for Adam is constant, passionate, even when he doesn't seem to reciprocate early on.
Her language must be richer for learners then.
Definitely more challenging, but also more rewarding. Lots of descriptive words, complex sentences, emotional expression to unpack.
So that reinterpretation of the fall, it's not just about curiosity, but about what comes after.
Right. Twain suggests it was, in a way, necessary. Yes, they lose the garden, but they gain something else. A deeper bond, love, family, the need for resilience. It challenges the traditional view by emphasizing growth through experience and knowledge.
It makes you think about how different cultures might tell that story, or how we value curiosity versus obedience.
It really does. It opens up those kinds of discussions.
Let's highlight some of those famous lines, the Adam one we mentioned.
Wheresoever she was, there was Eden. Just encapsulates love, loss, and his entire character arc. Wheresoever itself is slightly archaic now, beautiful word. Eden, obviously meaning paradise.
And Adam's earlier complaint.
She is always naming things, and it is a nuisance. Pure comedic gold. Shows the initial friction, the communication gap, a nuisance, just a bother, an annoyance. Simple, but effective.
What about a key quote from Eve?
Maybe. The garden is lost, but I have found him and am content. That shows her optimism, her priorities shifting. Love over paradise. Content, meaning satisfied, happy with what she has.
There's one where she sounds quite determined too.
Ah, yes. I am the first wife, and before I am done, I will show what a wife can be. That's got confidence, ambition. It subtly comments on evolving gender roles too. She's determined to define her own role.
And another one from Adam looking back.
After all these years, I see that I was mistaken about Eve in the beginning. It is better to live outside the garden with her than inside it without her. Again, hammers home the theme of love, companionship, how much he grew. Mistaken, realizing his initial judgment was wrong.
Those quotes really capture the essence, don't they? Analyzing them is great for understanding the themes and the language.
Definitely. Memorizing a few can really stick with you.
So, wrapping up, why would you say this book is particularly good for English learners?
Several reasons, really. The language, especially Adam's part, is quite accessible. The humor makes it engaging, not a chore to read.
Right. Motivation is key.
And it offers cultural insights into American literature, Twain's perspective. Plus, identifying those literary devices we talked about, irony, exaggeration builds analytical skills.
It's short, too, isn't it?
Very short, often under 100 pages, sometimes around 50, depending on the edition. Not intimidating. And the themes, love, misunderstanding, curiosity, they're universal, relatable.
Any tips for learners reading it?
Yeah, maybe read parts aloud to catch the rhythm. Keep a vocabulary journal for new words, especially Eve's descriptions. Discuss it with someone if possible. Maybe even try writing a short diary entry in Adam's or Eve's style.
Great ideas. It really does sound like a delightful and insightful read.
It truly is. The Diaries of Adam and Eve takes you on this wonderful journey into human nature and relationships, all filtered through Twain's unique wit and ultimately his deep affection for humanity.
Well, we certainly hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity to pick up this gem and explore it for yourself. It offers so much, both as literature and as a way to engage with the English language.
Couldn't agree more.
And hey, if you enjoyed this discussion, remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We'll be back with more explorations into literature and language learning.
Thanks for tuning in.